Hi, it's me, Jacqueline. Welcome to my channel. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to my channel and join me at Patreon. Link in the description. I jumped to my feet, took a few wobbly steps toward the stairs, then had my first reservations about the whole thing. Aunt Shirley, I'm not sure I can. You're afraid. You're about to do something you've never done before. How'd you feel the first time you ran out on a baseball field in front of a large crowd? Afraid. Of course you were afraid. That's normal. If we all dodged life when we were afraid, then nobody would do anything. She paused a while, then continued, just get your purse and your money and come along. I'll be with you, and I guarantee that nobody will recognize you. I did as I was told, and in very little time we were out the door under the cover of darkness and on our way to the mall. Were you afraid, Aunt Shirley? She laughed a little, then nodded and uttered, uh-huh. So how'd you get over it? By doing what we're doing right now, and by getting a job where I had to work with other people. Who took you? Nobody. I was so afraid that I didn't go out till I was much older than you are. It took a lot of guts. And getting a job took a lot of guts too. What did you do? I demonstrated cosmetics at a department store. The manager liked how I looked and asked me to put makeup on other women who came in and wondered what they could do to enhance their beauty. So I wore a lot of makeup every day, and I put even more makeup on the women and girls who came in. It gave me opportunity to talk to other women, woman to woman. It was fun. But it was me. If you're thinking of getting a job, you need to get a job that's right for you. I was silent for a moment, then asked, what about a dress shop? I love clothes. Sounds good. Why don't you try jeans right here in the mall? She turned into a parking space, and I felt my heart pounding a little bit harder as we got out of the car. Then, without hesitation, Aunt Shirley led the way through the mall doors with me trying desperately to keep up in my heels. About 20 steps in, and she reminded me to keep smiling. You look like you're terribly worried about falling. I smiled as we turned the corner, practically running into 3 girls from my English class. 2 weeks earlier, I'd even done a group presentation with 2 of them and almost said hello. But I'm no longer Alex. They did not recognize me, and we all apologized for our poor direction. Your voice is improving, Lexi. I smiled and muttered a soft thanks. Well, you're quite welcome. Now let's give it a little bit of a workout. She grabbed me by the wrist and dragged me into a store I'd never entered before. I glanced around, and on the wall above the register was the name Jeans. I thought her suggestion to get a job was nothing more than a suggestion, but here she was dragging me in. Again, I felt my heart pounding, a little bit higher in my chest this time. Yes, I was nervous, but I tried not to show it and started looking at some dresses. Any of those would look really nice on you. I looked up into the eyes of an older woman who stood an inch or 2 taller than me. Curly blonde hair hung to her shoulders and kind of bounced as she moved. She had long, beautiful eyelashes surrounding the bluest eyes I'd ever seen. I was trying to imagine how I'd look in this one. I pulled a blue dress from the rack. Good choice. The dressing room's just past the counter if you want to try it on. I hesitated a moment, looking in the direction she pointed, and thank goodness Aunt Shirley walked up right then. Oh, I see you 2 have met. Shirley. Long time no see. How you doing, Jean? Trying to fit my niece in something as blue as your eyes. You never told me you had a niece in town. Just arrived from Florida. The Sunshine State, I expected a little more tan, but I guess she spends most of her time indoors. Well, she's lovely just the same. I thought Jean had forgotten me, but suddenly she turned my direction and pointed once more toward the dressing room. Go ahead and try it on, little angel, while I do some catching up with your auntie. I did as instructed this time and disappeared for nearly 10 minutes. When I emerged, both ladies hurried over to say how sensational I looked in it. Then Jean said, you know that with your employee discount that dress will only be $70. Employee discount? They just stared at me a moment. Then Jean smiled and said, you start at 3:30 tomorrow, if you want the job. The only thing in my mind was that now I would have to pass as a girl. I would be forced to interact. And since Jean's is a nice dress shop, I would have to dress the part every day. Then Jean dropped the bomb. Since you're obviously in school, you will need a work permit as soon as possible. And until I get that, I can only let you work 3 hours a day. Is that okay with you, Lexi? Thank goodness Aunt Shirley was there with me. She jumped right in, explaining once again that I had just arrived from Florida and that I was not even enrolled yet, but that we could probably arrange for a work permit within 2 weeks. Jean smiled and nodded in response, then turned to me and in a voice a little bit louder than a whisper commanded, "And I will see you at 3:30 tomorrow, Lexi." Then she giggled and added, "I hope you like your aunt as much as I do. She is one of the most wonderful, genuine women I have ever met. She really knows what it means to be a woman." Knowing what I knew, I grinned and nodded in agreement. Shirley reminded me that I had to change back to the clothes I had been wearing when I came in, then said, quite matter-of-factly, "We'd better get home right now. I've got a lot of work to take care of by tomorrow afternoon." Suddenly she was out the door, gone for the evening. I headed upstairs, and once on the landing the phone rang. I answered as Lexi, assuming it was Dave, and I was right. I turned him down for the football game, but invited him over Sunday night. Maybe we could go for a walk or something. I was really stretching it, but my girl-talking-to-boy experience was quite limited and I was feeling the strain. Surprisingly, he accepted the counter-offer, which eased the stress level significantly. So we talked till almost midnight, covering every subject imaginable. He asked lots of questions about Florida, and I got pretty antsy, wondering if he was trying to figure out that I was a liar. Or should I say, how much of a liar I was. Finally, I said I really didn't want to talk about a place I would probably never see again, but that I'd love to hear about California. After all, this is the first time I've ever been here. That was the single best thing I could have done. He told me everything from the Gold Rush to Disneyland to the Golden Gate Bridge to the Winchester Mystery House to all the strange people you might see on Sunset Boulevard. He talked about how people can snow ski in the morning and surf in the afternoon, all because the mountains are so accessible. And through it all I succeeded in sounding like I'd never heard all these things before. Finally, we weren't making any sense, and the silence between speakers was growing increasingly long, so I told him good night and hung up. Shirley proved once again the next morning that she was incredible. She sat down at the kitchen table and started dialing while I opened the computer, then sat and just watched and listened. After the first few calls, she instructed me to get out the digital camera and tripod. She had me change clothes 3 times, then she combed my hair differently for each of 4 grade-level pictures. Once finished, she created a cum folder about Alexis Lynn Montgomery, 15-year-old sophomore from Rosemary Beach, Florida, a quaint little town I'd never been to or even heard of, about 70 miles east of Pensacola in the Florida Panhandle. Complete with ID photos from 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grades, as well as transcripts of my actual grades as Alex. At least that part wasn't a lie. My cum folder was more than a little bit convincing. In no time at all, everything imaginable had been changed. Aunt Shirley had a friend in Rosemary Beach who would intercept my real records when then arrived at the school district office and would mail the new records for Alexis ASAP so that I could enroll at my old high school within a week or 2. Once complete, she made a couple other phone calls and arranged for a new birth certificate correcting the mistakes that nobody had ever noticed in the previous 15 years. But now that she was about to go in for a learner's permit and start driving, it would be most appropriate if the birth certificate accurately identified me as Alexis, a girl. I don't know how they could possibly have made such a silly mistake, she told the county clerk. You'd think that a doctor, even an old country doctor, would be able to tell the difference between a boy and a girl, even if it was at 3 in the morning. Aunt Shirley went on and on with her chatter till they must have agreed to make the change and send a copy just to shut her up. It worked, though, and that's all that mattered. Slowly, methodically, I was becoming a girl. Not just in the mirror, but on paper as well. In a few days, young lady, she giggled, poking me in the nose with an extended index finger, you will be able to convince everybody but God that you are a girl and always have been. Why not God? Chromosomes. No matter what you do, no matter what the doctors do, you will still have those pesky male chromosomes. But I don't know of a single man any place on the planet who goes around checking out a woman's chromosomes. No, ma'am. Men are only interested in 5 things: boobs, both of them, cleavage, tied into boobs, thighs, skinny waists, and long, silky hair. If you have any one of those, even if it's not completely developed, men will be falling all over you. And if you've got 2 or more of those attributes, you'll be able to hold them spellbound for hours. No, Lexi, they won't be checking out your chromosomes. With that, she shoved the cum folder into one envelope, a check for Lexi's birth certificate in another envelope, sealed both, then leaned forward on her elbows, stared me in the eye, and said, "Now about your girlfriend? Seriously?" "Yeah, seriously." I just stared back into those beautiful eyes. "If you really want me to, call her. Use Alex's voice and get her over here as quickly as possible. While you're doing that, I'm going to the post office. I'll be back with hamburgers and fries for 3. Get her here by 5 o'clock. Okay." I nodded as she turned and left. Then, after 3 false starts, I succeeded in dialing Lydia's number. It only rang once. Lydia picked up, and before I could chicken out, I invited her to my house for hamburgers, assuring her that my aunt would be chaperoning. "I'd love to. What time?" 5. "Hold on." Then, with her hand over the mouthpiece, I heard her ask for her mother's permission, which, of course, was granted. Confused with everything that was happening to me so quickly, I went to the family room where I opened my purse and freshened my makeup. Then I sat in Dad's recliner, consciously pulled my knees together, and started thumbing through the 17 magazine Mom had left on the coffee table just for me. In a short time, before I had seen half the magazine, Aunt Shirley returned with burgers, fries, and a big bottle of root beer. "Did you call her?" "Yeah." I paused, expecting her to interject something. But she was silent. She said she'd be here at 5. "So look at your watch, Lexi." As I glanced at my left wrist, the doorbell rang. "Oh, crap. Now what do I do?" "You stay right here. I'll get the door. Eavesdrop on our chatter, but don't come until I call you." Agreed. Shirley hurried off to let Lydia in, and I moved to a point of invisibility where I'd be able to hear everything. "Lydia? Come in, come in. Alex will be down in a few minutes. I'm his aunt, Shirley Jenkins." There was silence as they moved across to the living room sofa where they sat at opposite ends. "So you're his mother's sister?" "No, his father's sister. My maiden name was Montgomery." "Have you known Alex very long?" "We've been best friends about 2 years. We go everywhere together, but I've always felt like we were best friends rather than boyfriend/girlfriend." "Oh, why's that?" "I don't know. I mean, we kiss like boyfriend/girlfriend, and we hold hands when we walk anywhere, but sometimes when we talk it's more like I'm talking to a girlfriend than a boyfriend." "Gee, this may be easier than I thought." "Excuse me? Lydia, there's something about Alex that I need to tell you before he comes in. But it sounds like you might have it figured out already. The main thing is, however, that you promise to keep secret what I tell you and what you see." "Secret?" There was obvious confusion in her voice. "I want to share some information about Alex that needs to be kept secret. If it gets out to anyone, lives can be ruined. I guess what I'm looking for is a promise that you won't tell what you are about to find out." "How can I promise that without knowing what you're talking about?" "I guess that's fair. It's just that we can't be too careful." Aunt Shirley was wonderful. She was doing her darndest to protect me, but it wasn't her fight, so to speak. So I didn't wait for the K. I simply stood, straightened my dress, and charged through the doorway. What she's talking about is my desire to be a girl. Please subscribe for the next part and visit my Patreon page for early access.